I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, the homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again for another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. This one's going to be Colby versus Woodley. I hope all of you guys enjoy these breakdowns. If you disagree, let me know why. If you agree, let me know why. Alright guys, enjoy. Tyson Nam versus Cerrone Rivera. And we're going to start with Tyson. So Tyson comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. Originally supposed to fight Matt Chanel just a few days ago. Now scheduled to fight Cerrone Rivera. Tyson is primarily a striker. Had a tough time entering the UFC, having to fight Kay Kara and Sergio Pettis. Quite gun shy in those fights. But it's understandable. Those are top fighters. Tyson is coming off a big win over Adeshev. Huge counter right hook from a low kick. Was able to put Adeshev in another realm. Really beautiful knockout, in all honesty. The opponent, Cerrone Rivera, comes into this fight 10 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut by way of the Contender Series. Cerrone had a really fun fight on the Contender, using his teeps early and often in that fight. Showed us his wrestling too, quite a strong grappler for the 125 division. Definitely a tough prediction to make. Cerrone will most likely use his kicks to score in this fight, especially the rear teep. Tyson will need to target the lead leg to slow Cerrone's kicking game down. As for boxing, I side with Tyson. The only thing that concerns me is his inactivity. He can't be gun shy in this fight, because Cerrone is a big boy for the 125 division. He will look to dictate that range with kicks, so Tyson really has to get going early. Super tough one to decide on, but I'm going to take Tyson Nam via decision. Most likely a close one too. My numbers would be Tyson Nam -145, Cerrone +125. If it stays kickboxing, I simply see it being a close one. Both guys picking up points, and that's why I price it at pretty close odds. And the actual odds for this fight are Tyson Nam coming in -175, Rivera +155. So yeah, I was in the ballpark on that one, kinda. Hope all you homies are staying lit. Next one we have Darrick Minner versus TJ Laramie. And we're going to start with Darrick. So Darrick comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against Grant Dawson. Had a grappling contest for pretty much the whole fight. Up until the point Grant was able to sink in a beautiful rear naked choke. Darrick Minner literally goes all out in that first round. Roughly 20 submission wins in his pro career. He's been subbed quite a few times too, so that really indicates that Darrick is either going to sub you or you're going to sub him. Darrick is all about that grappling life. Standing and striking is definitely something Darrick isn't looking to do. TJ Laramie comes into this fight 12 wins, 3 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut by way of the Contender Series. TJ is primarily a wrestler. In his Contender Series fight, he basically made Daniel Swain quit. Survived a couple submission attempts on the mat, used his ground and pound in that top control position, basically made Swain quit outside of round 1. Stylistically, this is a good matchup for TJ. He wants to wrestle. He has an opponent in Darrick who's looking to use his grappling too. Like I said, Darrick is round 1 or bust, but he isn't going to quit outside of round 1. Here's the problem though. TJ found himself in a couple bad positions on the mat, actually gave Swain an opportunity for an armbar. Darrick is pretty relentless in his search for a submission in that first round. I could see him getting it, but the flip side is TJ making it out of round 1, finishing Darrick later on. Man, I'm going to put a little bit of faith into the more experienced fighter in Darrick Minner. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be on TJ Laramie, and that pick I can't argue too much with. Like I just said, if TJ Laramie makes it out of that first round, chances are he definitely goes on to win a decision or even finishes Darrick Minner. But I have a little feeling that Darrick Minner could find some success on the mat in that first round. So I'm going to put a little bit of faith into Darrick Minner. Like I said, TJ Laramie does have a good chance, so I would price him as the favourite at -150. I am expecting to see dog odds on Darrick Minner. My odds on Darrick would be -130, and the real lines are TJ Laramie -300, which is insane. Darrick Minner +250. Now, I understand it, right? Darrick Minner round one or bust, but he has a lot of experience in that first round. It's either a good first round or a bad first round. I think it could be, it could be either. Darrick Minner could find a submission in that first round. But those odds, in my opinion, are a little blown up. Andre Ewell versus Rivera. And we're going to start with Andre. So Andre comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Seems to be primarily a striker. Most of us found out who Andre was when he debuted and beat the former champion Renan Barão. Andre was able to survive on the mat with Renan Barão, which kinda had us excited for Andre's potential grappling in the future. However, since that loss, he's been out grappled by Nathaniel Wood and Marlon Vera. Andre seems best when he's able to use that popping jab. Coming off a split win over Martinez, in all honesty, that split could have gone the other way. Rivera comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Irwin is also a fighter coming off a split win, where that split could have gone the other way. If we're judging Rivera off his 2 UFC fights, he was outclassed completely by Chikadze, had no real success in that fight. Against Ali, I wasn't too impressed with that performance either. It's fair to say, Irwin is game to fight anyone, anytime. I do like that. Irwin may have more punching power in this matchup, but overall skill set, I would lean with Andre Ewell. For Irwin to win this fight, he needs to take away the space, not allow Andre to use his kicks and that long jab. I think that'll be a difficult task for Irwin. I do see Andre having more success with his skill set, so for those reasons, I'm going to take Andre Ewell via decision. My line would be Andre Ewell -180, Rivera +160. The actual odds for this fight are Andre Ewell coming in -200, -220, Irwin +175, +185. Yeah, I agree with it. Maybe a little bit overpriced, so I expect to see some action on Rivera later this week, but yeah, like I said, man, Andre Ewell, I see him having a better skill set, overall skill set, and Rivera just needs to get close. He needs to keep this dirty, really look to put some pressure on Andre Ewell, take away that jab and that distance. I think that will be a difficult job though. Randy Costa versus Journey Newson, and we're going to start with Randy. So Randy comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC, training out of Lausanne MMA. So it's fair to say Randy is training around some very, very good fighters. When I look at Randy's fights, without a doubt, I can see potential for this guy to become a very good fighter in the future. His boxing is solid, his wrestling is solid too. Suffered a loss in his UFC debut to Brandon Davis. I went against Randy in that one purely down to experience. He showed me exactly what I wanted to see in the follow-up fight. Bounced back from that loss with a huge TKO win over a very good boxer in Boston Salmon. The opponent, Journey Newson, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. I noticed that Journey's win over Pilate had been overturned to a no contest. Not exactly sure why that is. Beautiful overhand right from Journey in that fight. Was able to utilise his boxing to get that one done. I mentioned Randy Costa having solid boxing, even able to beat a lifelong boxer in Boston. But man, Journey Newson is no slouch when it comes to trading hands. The matchmaking is brilliant here. 2 up-and-coming fighters who have good potential to excel at the highest level in the game. If this was strictly a boxing contest, man, it's really 50-50. However, when I think about takedowns, scrambling, fighting up against the fence, I think Randy Costa is that fighter that's going to be willing to mix it up. If Randy does mix it up the way I anticipate, I think he's going to notch up more points. So purely down to notching up more points, I'm going to take Randy Costa via decision. Like I said, the matchmaking is very good here. I wouldn't be surprised with either outcome. I think Newson, if he really shows up, he can win this fight. But on the flip side, I think Randy Costa could absolutely win this fight too. My odds personally would be Randy Costa minus 120, Newson plus 100. And the actual odds are Newson minus 140, Randy Costa plus 120. Wow, that's really interesting. I think Randy Costa, there's some good value on him there. Newson getting some respect. I do like to see that because he is a good fighter, but man, I've got to go with the plus money on that one, boys. Sarah Alpar versus Jessica Rose Clark, and we're going to start with Sarah. So Sarah comes into this fight 9 wins, 4 losses as a pro, making her UFC debut by way of the Contender Series. It's been about a year since Sarah won that Contender Series fight. She was able to gas her opponent out, ended up taking her back, sinked in a rear naked choke. Sarah didn't impress me too much in that fight. She's kinda lucky her opponent fatigued the way she did. But I do have to give Sarah credit, she still got it done. She was able to finish her opponent, used her wrestling, used her jiu-jitsu. So credit where credit's deserved, you know? The opponent, Jessica Rose Clark, comes into this fight 2 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. This fight could be make or break for Jessica. I say that because we all know Dana White is looking for not only high-level fighters, but entertaining fighters too. Jessica does have more experience than Sarah. She has fought better competition. She's experienced in all areas of mixed martial arts. I think Jessica needs to really show her hunger in this matchup. She got outboxed quite badly against Pannie Khamzat. Use that loss to fire yourself up for this fight. In my opinion, this fight really could go either way. Sarah could get takedowns to edge out close rounds, but Jessica could really stick a move, avoid takedowns, and even edge out close rounds herself. I doubt any of us are super confident in making a prediction for this fight, but I'm going to side with the fighter that's been in there with better opposition, and that's Jessica. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Jessica Rose Clark via decision. My odds would be a slight lean on Jessica at minus 120, Sarah coming back plus 100. Interested to see what the odds are for this. We have Jessica Rose Clark minus 220. Wow. Sarah Alpar coming back plus 180, plus 190. So that kind of tells me that a lot of people betting on this fight weren't too impressed with Sarah on the Contender Series. But like I said, she still got it done. She didn't look too impressive, but she still got it done. And that's a good quality to have. Jessica Rose Clark, in my opinion, I mean, she deserves to be the favourite, but at minus 220, wow. Jordan Espinosa versus David Dvorak, and this is a pretty decent matchup. We're going to start with Jordan. So Jordan comes into this fight 2 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. Looking at Jordan's UFC career to date, he suffered 2 losses via submission, which tells us straight away Jordan likes to be upright. I'm aware Matt Chanel tagged Jordan before getting that submission win, but still, I think Jordan is most difficult when he's on his bike. Similar to what he did against Eric Shelton, constantly circling the octagon, just using his speed as the advantage. David Dvorak comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. I believe Dvorak is now on a 14 fight win streak, something like that, very impressive. His UFC debut also very impressive. Even an underdog in that fight. Showcased decent technique in his striking. Speed was also very noticeable. He came up against a Brazilian fighter in Bruno Silva who definitely packs good power in his punches. Probably more power than a guy like Espinosa. I highlighted the fact that Espinosa is best when he's circling the octagon, using his speed for the low kicks and jabs. The problem is though, I think Dvorak is a pretty quick flyweight fighter too. So if Espinosa isn't going to have much of an advantage, if an advantage at all, with that type of movement, with that type of speed that he's looking to implement, then I do think David Dvorak could have good success with his own striking, his own game plan, potentially even finish Espinosa. So for those reasons, I'm going to side with David Dvorak via TKO in round number 2. My line would be Dvorak minus 170, Espinosa plus 150. Watching Matt Chanel tag Espinosa the way he did and then sink in that choke, it really puts me off taking Espinosa in this type of matchup. Like I said, Dvorak is on a good win streak. I like his technique. His speed looked good. I like Dvorak in this one. And the real line, the real odds at the moment is David Dvorak minus 110, minus 120. Espinosa exactly the same. So, yeah, a little bit interesting because Dvorak was a little bit overlooked in his UFC debut. I think he's being a little bit overlooked here too. Jordan Espinosa is best when he's using his speed, but Dvorak is very quick, so I don't see Espinosa having too much success with his game plan. Yeah, interesting odds on that one. Let me know what you think below. Mayra Silva versus Borella. And let's start with the Brazilian. So Mayra comes into this fight, 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. This woman packed some heat in her punches, man, for sure. Was able to submit the jiu-jitsu practitioner, Gillian, in her debut. Most recently went toe-to-toe with Markos. She was outpointed in that fight. Started to really find success later on. But just a bit too late for Mayra. No shame though. It's not like she was blown out of the water. She competed. I remember taking Markos in that fight, thinking, man, this fight is heating up late. The opponent, Mayra Borella, comes into this fight 2 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. I'm honestly not sure of the foundation for Borella at this point. Her debut excited us, completely dominated Kalindra in her debut, used her wrestling and BJJ. Since then, she's just been underperforming, you know. Lauren Murphy, De La Rosa, Casey, all able to beat Borella. Murphy and Casey with finishes. De La Rosa was able to fatigue Borella with wrestling. This is most likely make or break for Borella. What is Borella going to do to find success? If she takes Mayra down, she's probably getting subbed. If she stands and looks to keep it kickboxing, I wouldn't be surprised if Mayra was able to find a kill shot. She's that aggressive with her striking. I think this is a horrible matchup for Borella. I'd have to take the Brazilian in this fight, and potentially to finish Borella too. So I'm going to take Mayra via TKO in round number 2. My odds would be Mayra minus 220, Borella plus 180. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on Borella, but man, if you look at her fights, it's really hard to take her in this spot. The real odds are Mayra coming in even higher than my odds, minus 250, Borella returning plus 200. I really can't argue with it. Mayra looks like a killer. Borella looks like a fighter ready to be killed. You know, that's really how I see this fight going down. Alright, my homies, you know what time it is. If you waited to smoke with me, amen. If you've been smoking this whole time, amen. If you're not a smoker, but you enjoy the smoke breaks, triple amen. Alright, my homies, I hope you're all good, having a good time, keeping safe, working on whatever you're working on in life. Doesn't matter what it is. I hope you're smashing your goals every single day. I've tried to wait a little later this week to bring these uploads out. You know we're going to get cancellations, right? It's a mandatory thing right now. Every single UFC event, we're getting these late cancellations. So trying to wait a little bit to see if there's going to be any replacements. I will bring out the OG format on Friday. So if you're listening to this smoke break and you haven't listened to the other predictions, that's cool, right? I'll bring them the OG format out on Friday. If you are using this format, a quick reminder, if you use the playlist that I've created, it's much easier to go through each breakdown because it just clicks on to the next one if you use the playlist. If you're not using the playlist and you don't mind, it's cool, right? Whatever the easier way listening to these breakdowns is for you, whatever way you find most enjoyable, then do that, right? As always, let me know what you're smoking on. I love reading the strains that you guys are smoking on. Most recently, the strain that's caught my eye, and I think it wasn't last week, it was the week before, Orange Skittles. I want to see someone top that strain, because that's a decent strain, you know. And let me know in the comments, guys, on this smoke break video. Did the OG format help you out last week to view the channel better? The new format, is it more enjoyable without the intros every video? I went back to the original graphics on screen, which is the UFC's pictures. Let me know if you prefer that or last week's graphics. So yeah, drop all of those answers down below. I love reading what everyone thinks. Being a content creator is about trying new things, but also pleasing the majority of your community as well. Obviously, you can't please everyone. That's an impossible thing to do, but it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't try to please everyone, right? And if you try to please everyone, then you're going to get a majority on your community. And that's what I'm looking to do. Alright guys, let's get into breaking down the rest of these fights. We've got to spark up for Home Alone. We've got to. We have Kevin Home Alone Holland versus Darren Stewart. And we're going to start with the one that was left home alone. So Kevin comes into this fight, I believe 5 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a jiu-jitsu practitioner, very high level BJJ. However, that's not really the place Kevin looks to take the fight. He's more than happy to use his kicking game. Coming off a very beautiful TKO win over Buckley, used his frame and reach advantage in that fight. If you give Kevin Holland space, he will pretty much always find success at kicking distance. It's important to make the fight dirty against Home Alone. The opponent, Darren Stewart, comes into this fight 6 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC, primarily a boxer. Darren has suffered with his grappling, but we do have to give him credit, acknowledge that he's improved in that area. Was able to get up off the mat against Dern Win, a lifelong wrestler. He was even able to submit Maki Patolo, and Maki was looking to exploit Darren's grappling, ended up having his own grappling exploited in that fight. I'd give Kevin pretty much an advantage in every area of this fight. Kicking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. If there's anywhere that Darren could compete and maybe even win, it's probably boxing. But to do that, he'll have to close the distance and keep it in the pocket, which no one can seem to do against Kevin. Kevin's able to fight at his distance way more than not. The only time Kevin is in a close fight is if he's on the mat. And if he's on the mat in this fight, I see him getting a submission. So for those reasons, I'm going to side with Kevin Home Alone Holland via decision. My odds would be Kevin Holland minus 200, Darren Stewart plus 175. And the actual odds are Kevin Holland minus 250, Darren Stewart coming back plus 220. Can't argue with it too much, considering I said Kevin Holland has an advantage in most areas of this fight, but Darren Stewart needs to get dirty. He needs to get in there, close the distance, keep it in the pocket. If he can do that, I wouldn't put him plus 220. But Kevin Holland is brilliant at keeping the fight in his fight. Fighting at distance, using his kicks often, early and often. And I think Kevin Holland is going to have success with that in this fight. Mackenzie Dern versus Randa Markos. And we're going to start with the Brazilian. So Mackenzie comes into this fight 3 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. A lifelong jiu-jitsu practitioner. Very high level black belt. Choosing to engage on the mat with Mackenzie is literally playing with fire. Hannah Cypher's got a bit excited in that stack guard position, which I knew straight away would end badly, and it did. Dern isn't the best striker, nowhere near it. But like I said, that's because her lifelong practice is on the mat. So that's where she'll look to take each and every fight. The opponent, Randa Markos, comes into this fight 6 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler. Randa is the biggest yo-yo fighter in the UFC. Win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1. I've been waiting for this pattern to end for years, literally. I think this time it could. Randa has improved with her boxing, but still, without a doubt, most difficult when she's bullying her opponent with her wrestling. She has very strong top control, decent scrambling too. For some reason, she engaged with a stand-up war. Well, not even a war, a stand-up battle against Claudia Gadelha, and she was so out of place in that fight. Very gun-shy, backpedaling, no confidence in her striking. Stylistically, this is a grappler versus grappler fight, wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. I hope we get that style of fight too, because like I said, both of these girls are best when they're body to body with their opponent. I don't want to see either girl testing each other too much with their secondary skill set, which is striking, obviously. It could be quite a close fight if it's kept upright, but if it hits the mat, it could be a case of Randa stays on top until she gets caught, or Dern even takes Randa's back when searching for a takedown. Overall, I think Jiu-Jitsu could be the winner of this fight. So I'm going to take Mackenzie Dern via submission in round number 2. My numbers would be Mackenzie minus 175, Randa plus 140. Simply because if the fight is kept upright, it could be a close one. And if it goes to the mat, that's where I start to favour Mackenzie Dern getting the fight finished. The odds in this fight, Mackenzie minus 165, minus 175. So yeah, perfect line from me this time. Yeah, I really hope we get that grappling match, because Mackenzie Dern, by no means a striker. Randa Markos, she tried to strike with Claudia. It didn't look good. So yeah, I hope both women look to engage in the grappling. Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann. What a matchup this is. Let's start with the Brazilian. So Johnny comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. The hype train is well and truly over. From 3-0 to a 2-fight losing streak. Johnny Walker, absolutely beatable. 2 fighters have proven that. Let's take a look at what made Johnny such a dangerous guy to begin with. It was that explosiveness. That unorthodox explosiveness. Johnny is the type of guy to throw a head kick and spin straight off of that. That's how Ledet ended up getting beat. I think Johnny just needs that bit of confidence back. A big performance to get him back on track. The opponent, Ryan Spann, comes into this fight 4-0 inside the UFC. Now this is a dangerous man too. An underrated choke game. Whether you're up against the fence or on the mat, Ryan Spann doesn't mind choking you. Also a dangerous boxer. The way he put Lil Nog out was disgusting. Thinking about this fight in a striking situation gets me excited. We've got one very explosive, unorthodox fighter coming up against a very long fighter with dangerous boxing. I did notice how much Ryan Spann fatigued against Sam Alvey. I've also noticed how Johnny Walker fatigued against Krylov when made to grapple. If this fight hits the last round, it will be very interesting to see who has more in the tank. For some reason, despite obviously knowing that the hype train isn't alive at this moment, I do still think Johnny Walker can win this fight. He has to target the legs of Ryan, just look to be explosive and dangerous like we know he can be. I'm going to take Johnny Walker via TKO in round number 1. My numbers would be close, because either guy, in my opinion, as likely as each other. I'd put Walker minus 110, Ryan Spann minus 110. I just think Ryan could do it, he could get it done in that first round or second. Johnny Walker, absolutely capable of finishing Ryan Spann too. Now the odds, the real odds at the moment, pretty much perfect. Johnny Walker minus 120, Ryan Spann plus 110. I completely agree with it. That tells me 50% of you guys are going to be on Ryan, the other 50% are going to be on Johnny. Let me know in the comments below. Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald Meerschaert, and we're going to start with Khamzat. So Khamzat comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC. Primarily a smasher, a championship wrestler, showing us already how nasty he can be. Khamzat is basically the 170 version of Khabib. Completely dominated both John Phillips and Rhys McKee. GM3, without a doubt, a big step up in competition. Will Khamzat's game plan change too much? I don't think it will change at all. He's looking to take you down and smash you. He's pretty damn good at it too. The opponent, GM3 comes into this fight 6-5 inside the UFC, primarily a jiu-jitsu fighter, a black belt in the world of jiu-jitsu. Let's get to the story of this fight. Could GM3 sub Khamzat? He could. He definitely could. But the flip side is Khamzat smashes GM3 in similar fashion to which Jack Hermansson did. For me, that's way more likely than GM3 finding a submission. Maybe GM3 even looks to keep this fight standing. If this fight is kept standing, I wouldn't be surprised if Khamzat showed us good striking. He trains with good fighters. I do expect him to have somewhat of a decent striking game. Ultimately though, I see Khamzat taking GM3 down, avoiding submissions and ending it with ground and pound. So I'm going to take Khamzat via TKO in round number 1. My odds would be Khamzat -300, GM3 +240. This is purely a battle of wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. I think Khamzat is so aggressive and dominant with his ground and pound, it will basically cause GM3 to cover up more than search for submissions. Now the actual odds for this fight are Khamzat -350, Gerald coming back +310, +315. Maybe it's a little bit deep, but man, I understand why everyone is putting their money on Khamzat. This guy is a smasher, you know, very impressed with the debut, even more impressed with the most recent performance. And is he going to look to do anything different? No, he's going to look to take GM3 down, dominate him with that top control and search for a dominant ground and pound finish. Can't argue too much with the odds. This co-main event is a brilliant co-main event. We have Donald Cerrone versus Niko Price, and we're going to start with the cowboy. Donald comes into this fight 23 wins, 12 losses inside the UFC. We always start the same with these legends. A veteran's veteran. He's seen it all, he can do it all. A brilliant jiu-jitsu game, a very decent striker. Donald is now on a 4-fight losing streak. I actually felt like he won his last fight against Pettis. I know it was a close one, difficult to score, but my scorecard was for Donald Cerrone. Niko Price comes into this fight 7 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a crazy man, a fighter that's never in a boring fight, and that's purely down to the fact that Niko Price brings it. He isn't looking to be too technical, although his technique is very good. He's always willing to trade in the pocket. He does take a lot of damage, but definitely dishes out a lot of damage himself. Cerrone has the experience to beat Price, but Cerrone has taken so much damage over the years. Coming up against a warrior in Niko could end badly. I think if Niko looks to make it dirty really early, he could put Cerrone in a position to cover up and look for a way out of the fight. I think that outcome is more likely than Cerrone finding a finish. I could be proven wrong. Cerrone is a veteran, a legend, but for me, I feel more comfortable taking Niko Price. He's a very dangerous fighter. I think he will hurt Cerrone at some point, maybe even late in this fight. So I'm going to take Niko Price via TKO in round number 3. My odds would be Niko -175, Donald Cerrone +150. And the actual odds are Niko Price -150, Donald Cerrone +135, +125. So yeah, I agree with those odds, man. Donald Cerrone absolutely has the experience and the know-how to beat Niko Price, but he's taken so much damage over the years. If Niko Price goes out there looking for a firefight, looking for that crazy entertaining fight of the night, I think he could put Donald away. He's just that crazy. I'd love to know who you guys are taking on this one, man, because this co-main event is brilliant. Donald Cerrone, Niko Price, fireworks. Alright, 2 things before we break this one down. Number 1, make sure you Khamzat smash the like buttons with all these breakdowns. Number 2, if you want to be friends outside of YouTube, we can do that on Instagram at UFC Lay. I've enjoyed engaging with a few of you guys over the last couple days. Alright, we have Colby versus Woodley. And we're going to start with the supposed people's champ. the guy that makes America great again, right? So, Colby comes into this fight 10 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler inside the octagon. I'm sure most of you need no breakdown for what this man is good at. His output is 10 out of 10. His conditioning is 10 out of 10. Keeping up with Colby is a very difficult task for any fighter. Even the champion, Kamaru Usman, had to fight in such a disciplined manner to achieve nearly a 25-minute fight with Colby. Colby isn't one of these fighters who's going to put you away. It's more an accumulation of punches, and that's when he isn't wrestling. It's one or the other at all times. The opponent, Tyron Woodley, comes into this fight 9 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. The former 170-pound champion, primarily a wrestler. If Tyron isn't using his wrestling, it's literally a right hand. A right hand is everything we're waiting for when it comes to Tyron Woodley striking. We have to admit that Tyron hasn't looked anything like himself recently. He's never been a high output fighter, but the performance against Burns was absolutely horrible. Even had to give himself a slap in the face to try and wake himself up. I'm excited for this fight because both of these fighters have a strong dislike towards each other, which should have both fighters fired up, ready to fight. Can Tyron win? Could he land that right hand? The answer definitely isn't no, put it that way. Is that my prediction though? No, it's not. For me, I have to take the fighter that's got more to offer, and that's Colby. Higher output, better cardio, an ability to absolutely compete in the wrestling too. So for those reasons, I'm going to have to take Colby via decision. My odds would be Colby minus 250, Tyron plus 210, I'd say. Maybe that's being a little bit harsh, but at the same time, we must look at the most recent performances of these guys. I know Tyron used to be the champion, but as of right now, it doesn't look too good. The real odds on this matchup, we have Colby coming in minus 350, minus 360. Tyron coming back plus 280, plus 290. So I felt I was a little bit harsh with my odds, but it looks like everyone's money is going on Colby. If you're taking Tyron Woodley, let me know in the comments and let me know why. But for me, I see Colby just popping the jab, constant boxing combinations, looking to wrestle Tyron, put him up against the fence whenever he wants. I don't see Colby losing this one. Alright the homies, I hope you enjoyed all the breakdowns this week and I'm looking forward to engaging with all of you guys. Alright, peace.